Minnesota Timberwolves and Andrew Wiggins both need a fresh new start. If you're in Minnesota Timberwolves, you got to first figure out what direction are you going. Are you going to be in a lottery? Are you going to try to rebuild for the future? Or are you going to try to trade for some pieces and surround them by Karl-Anthony Towns and basically have Karl-Anthony Towns the focus and the center point of your offense and of your organization for the next 10 years? Because the brother's talented. He averaged like 24 and 12 this season. Got snubbed on the All-NBA team, which cost him $30 million. Got snubbed on the All-Star team. Should have been at the All-Star game. So you got to figure out that. I think the direction that they should go in is possibly trading for some pieces around Karl-Anthony Towns so you can teach him and continue to allow him to grow as a player. And the only best way to grow as a player, if you're competing for playoff spots each and every year and getting the playoffs and stuff like that, so you won't be in a similar situation where you're with Anthony Davis in a few years where Karl-Anthony Towns is going to want out if you're losing and you're not competing in the Western Conference. So the first thing you do is you figure out the right pieces surrounded by Karl-Anthony Towns, possibly some shooters, some players that is going to really, kind of like similar to what they did in Orlando Magic with Dwight Howard. They got a lot of shooters centered around Karl-Anthony Towns, centered around Dwight Howard, but you do the same thing with Karl-Anthony Towns. You get a bunch of shooters, you let him control the middle, and he's also a big man that can space the floor as well. So he's really a modern-day big, and he's a complete big, and he's very much the full package. So if you can figure out ways to get the right roster around Karl-Anthony Towns, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves can be set up for the future to at least compete in the Western Conference. Before as Andrew Wiggins, I supported Andrew Wiggins. I've been one of Andrew Wiggins' biggest fans. He's 24 years old, but at some time you got to start showing your potential. And this season it was a big drop off. He averaged like 16 points per game, shot 41% from the field. You know, same old 2-3 rebounds, 2-3 assists per game. That's not going to get it done. And before, I was saying that, well, you know what, Jimmy Butler came and it kind of stunted his growth, stunted his development a little bit. He was averaging 23, 24 points before Jimmy Butler came. And Jimmy Butler came, it was an awkward fit. So Jimmy Butler left and his numbers didn't really increase, they decreased. So I don't know what's going to happen with Andrew Wiggins, but I know that Andrew Wiggins needs out in Minnesota. He needs a fresh new start, and the Minnesota Timberwolves need a fresh new start away from him. So I started thinking about teams that should trade for Andrew Wiggins. The first team I thought about is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, people are going to say, you just mentioned about the awkward fit with Andrew Wiggins and Jimmy Butler. That is true, but with Paul George, who can play either the 3 or the 2, and then you pair him with Andrew Wiggins, who possibly can play the 2. Andrew Wiggins really can play the 2 or 3 as well, but Paul George is a much better shooter from the outside than Jimmy Butler. He doesn't really clog up the paint when Andrew Wiggins is trying to attack, and Paul George can let it fly. So how you do this trade? You trade Dennis Schroeder, and you trade Andre Robertson, and you trade Oklahoma City's 21st pick for Andrew Wiggins. People may say that's a lot, but Robertson hasn't been healthy, didn't play the entire season. Dennis Schroeder, you're going to have to re-up him if you want to keep him in the future because he has a 1-year deal left on his contract, so you might as well get rid of him. At least you get Andrew Wiggins, who is 24 years old and still has loads of potential. Now, does he unlock that potential with OKC? I don't know, but if you're OKC, you got to figure out something because you've been knocked out of the first round the past 2 years in a row. So you need an additional player that can get buckets, and Andrew Wiggins has the ability to get buckets, but it's just some nights he's going to get 40, some nights he's going to get 12 and shoot 4 for 18 from the field. So you got to figure out what you want to do if you're OKC. But if I'm OKC and I'm Sam Presti, it's not a lot of trades out there that you can possibly do. So I think I would try to go for that trade. Another trade I would suggest for Andrew Wiggins and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And if you're a Minnesota Timberwolves, you get Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder can replace Jeff Teague, who's been injury prone as well. You get another elite defender in Andre Robertson to pair potential with Robert Covington. So I think that would be a good defensive backcourt, defensive wings for the Minnesota Timberwolves as well. If you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you also can trade Andrew Wiggins to the Detroit Pistons. Or if you get Blake Griffin and you swap out Andrew Wiggins, Robert Covington, and then your 11th overall pick for Blake Griffin. Now, Blake Griffin paired to Karl-Anthony Towns, people say it's an awkward fit, but actually it's the perfect fit because Blake Griffin is an all-around big man. He can dribble, he can rebound, he can pass. He's like a point forward. Pair him next to Karl-Anthony Towns, who can also score inside, outside, and you start building around those two. then you could be competing in the Western Conference for years to come. And Blake Griffin, if he can stay healthy like he did with the Detroit Pistons this entire past season, then that's a nice dynamic big duo between Blake Griffin and between Karl Anthony Towns. So that's another trade that you can do. Another team that could trade for Andrew Wiggins, if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, that you may be interested in doing a deal with, is the San Antonio Spurs. You give the San Antonio Spurs Andrew Wiggins, Dario Saric as your number 11 overall pick, maybe a future first-round pick, depending on what they ask for DeMar DeRozan. You get DeMar DeRozan, who is still capable of going out, putting up big numbers. And then, and most importantly, if you do not want to re-sign DeMar DeRozan in 2 years, you get out of that huge contract with Andrew Wiggins. So it's a win-win for both teams. The San Antonio Spurs get Andrew Wiggins, who has a big contract, but is still young enough. And we know the San Antonio Spurs is good at developing players. We've seen what they did with Kawhi Leonard. We see what they do with a lot of no-name players that come up out of the G League and come up low draft picks, and then they become viable starters or great superstars. So San Antonio Spurs are known for player development, so I think that would be a good fit for Andrew Wiggins. That'd probably be the perfect fit for Andrew Wiggins. And like I said, if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, you get DeMar DeRozan, and basically you get to see if he fits well with Karl Anthony Towns. If he doesn't, you let him walk, and then you kind of have all this money and cap space to go out and look for free agents as well. So I think that's another perfect trade, another perfect fit for the Minnesota Timberwolves, and also a perfect fit for Andrew Wiggins.